Hi, I'm Carol Jurgensen Sheets, aka Carol the Coach, and I do a couple radio shows for both the partner and the sex addict. The partner show is called Betrayal Recovery Radio, and you can access that through iTunes, where I interview all the experts in the field as to how to make partners feel better. It's a great radio show for sex addicts to understand and empathize where the partner is. Then, of course, my other show, it's been on for 6 years, it's a podcast also, can be accessed through iTunes too. And that show is called Sex Help with Carol the Coach. And I have shows for the partners and shows for the addicts, and we talk about everything. Now, today, I'm going to talk to you about what is in the partner's best interest. Because what I know more than anything is that a partner wants to feel safe in an unsafe situation. Barbara Steffen's quote from My Sexually Addicted Spouse. And to feel safe typically means you need to know everything about the issues and events that your husband participated in. And wow, that can put the brain on overload. And so I'm going to say, although you deserve to know the general truth, it's not good to put every fact, every image, every bit of data into that brain of yours. I'm here to protect your brain. Now, why is that? Because I'm a partner-sensitive therapist. And what I know to be true after doing this work for years and years and years is that it is good for you to know the truth. That's why, after a certain amount of recovery, and for every couple that's different, if he's got a month clean, 3 months clean, 6 months clean, it's time for you to have a disclosure with somebody that knows how to do that. Somebody who's going to take your questions as a partner and feed them to the addict, make sure that he or she puts them in a formal disclosure process, and then bam, after that, you will have the information you need. However, what I know to be true is that a partner oftentimes wants every single minute detail because it makes you feel like you've got some sense of control. When the truth of the matter is, it's not good for you. It's not good for you at all. And so for that reason, as a good therapist, as somebody who's out for your best interest, I'm going to ask you, why do you need to know that? How does that benefit you? I'm going to be graphic here. You may say, well, I want to know if she had anal sex with him. And I'm going to say, okay, I can accept that. You want to know if his propensity and his sexual addiction is for anal sex. I get that. But you don't need to know who initiated that first. You don't need to know how many times that occurred in a session, in a transaction, if you will. What you need to do is know enough details so that you know the total picture of what's going on. And that's up to you and I to work on and decide. That's why you need a partner-sensitive trauma therapist. Somebody who gets the fact that someone else would go, you're crazy to know all that stuff. And I would say, it's normal. So, the most important thing I want to do is to protect your brain, because one of the things that I know about partners is that no matter what information you want, once you put it in your brain, you never forget. And I don't want you to have images, thoughts, feelings that you can't forget. And actually, the addict doesn't either. He was so out of control. He was so enmeshed in his own illness that he was unaware of the consequences of how that would hurt you if you knew. And so what he did was despicable. It was deplorable. It was unimaginable. And yet, that's the nature of the addiction. It gets worse and worse and worse. So, I'm going to ask you, are you protecting your brain? Are you protecting the back of that brain that does the amygdala? You know, the amygdala is the fight, flight, or freeze. The more you have in that amygdala, the more likely you are to participate in behaviors you would never participate in. The more likely you are to wake up in the middle of the night and punch them. The more likely you are to get up in the middle of the day and pack the car and leave. Those are fight, flight, and freeze responses. And once that energy travels to the anterior cingulate, that is the emotional area that typically holds rejection. And there is no worse experience, and I'm telling you this, in terms of an emotion than rejection. And sexual betrayal, partner betrayal, that causes a huge amount of rejection. And so, when you know all the details that make you feel more and more and more rejected, it's not good for your brain. Now, from that anterior cingulate goes the prefrontal cortex, which is your executive functioning. It's your ability to make decisions. And here's what I know. That goes offline when you've had this kind of trauma. It really, really does. And when that goes offline, wow, you don't make good decisions. You aren't able to understand reality. You're running on adrenaline. You're either hypervigilant or you're super depressed. And that's why I want to protect that brain, because the brain is something that you need to make better decisions. And it eventually goes back online, but if you overload it, it'll take a lot longer, and I'm here to protect you. You've already been betrayed. Now you cannot betray yourself by overloading your brain with information you don't want to know. So in retrospect, you don't want details without having a formal structure that gives you the details. It's called a formal disclosure. And to do that, you've got to have a trained therapist, somebody who is good at knowing what the structure is. Coaches do it too. Clinical therapists and coaches who have been trained by APSATs know how to do that. So, okay, now we got our disclosure. But before you do a disclosure, you need good recovery. And like I said, that can be anywhere from a month to 6 months or more. I just don't think you should have to wait 5 years for a disclosure. So we tend to, when a recovery's been established, we tend to move into the direction of you finding out everything you need to know. You write out all your questions, you give it to a therapist. The therapist reveals it to the addict includes it in the disclosure, and then we all sit down together for a 1, 2, or 3 hour, mine are 3 hours, 3 hour process where you can learn all the truth. But not every single detail. Now, ultimately, if you want the details and I say, I don't want you to have the details, you get to decide. I'm not the manager of your life. I just make recommendations. So, if you get a therapist who's telling you what to do and it's going against what you want and you've really thought it through, you've talked to your support group about it, you've read about it, and it doesn't feel right, then I say you get a second opinion, just like you would if you had cancer. And if you go to somebody like APSATs, that Association for Partners of Sex Addicts and Partner Specialists that have experienced trauma, we know partners experience trauma and we want to be there for you. I promise you, you'll get a better bang for your buck and more safety in your life. And that's ultimately what you're looking for. I'm Carol Jurgensen-Sheets. Protect your brain. I want you to be out for yourself, and I'm here for you too. Have a great week.